love, heal. You can't do them alone. We all lose people we love, so let's talk about it. I'm Angela Melvin. My mother died when I was 10 years old, and that's why I started Valerie's House. It's a safe place in Southwest Florida for children who've lost someone they love. Join us as we explore how to grieve, love, and heal together.
Hi listeners. In this episode of Grieve Love Heal, we discuss death by suicide and suicidal ideation. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts about suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. Or you can text HOME to 741-741 to connect with a crisis text line counselor. You can also find a variety of resources about discussing suicide loss and preventing suicide on our website at valerieshouse.org under the Grief Resources tab. We're glad you're with us today to discuss this important and difficult topic. Suicide. It almost feels like a bad word, and it's definitely not something most people feel okay talking about. But for those who have lost someone they love to suicide, and for those who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts, it's something we do need to talk about. Suicide rates have been rising steadily for the past several years, and the rising youth suicide rates has increased exponentially since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. While we know death by suicide isn't easy to talk about, it's so important too. These candid conversations can help others who have lost a loved one to suicide know that they're not alone and increase awareness about this ongoing mental health crisis. Joining us on the podcast today are 3 members of the Valerie's House community who have each lost someone dear to them by suicide. They're here to talk about what it feels like to live on after this kind of loss, the stigma surrounding suicide, and to share what helped them through it. All right, and we are recording. Thank you all so much for being part of the podcast today. It's so good to see you, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your days to talk to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
So I thought we could start off just like we would with a normal Valerie's House group night or a peer grief support group. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love if we could go around and all check in. Nina, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So my name is Nina. The special person that I lost in my life is my brother, Larry. And that happened when I was 11 years old. I think on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm a little nervous right now. So I think I would say I'm about an 8 or a 9. And I'm happy to be here, though. I'm happy to be a part of this podcast.
Don't be nervous.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to.
Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
I'll go next. My name is Sydney, and the special person in my life that I lost is my dad about a year and a half ago. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I'm probably like a 9 or a 10 today. I'm feeling pretty good. Happy to be here for sure.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
And then I'm Sean. Sorry, excuse me. The special person that I lost was my brother Connor. I was about 14, 15 at the time. And today I'm about an 8, little nervous, little excited. So, never done anything like this. So
Well,
happy to
thank
be
you.
here.
Yeah, we're so glad that you guys could all join, and thank you so much for doing it. So
Yeah.
Sydney is going to lead our discussion today. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Alexa. I'm the communications coordinator and executive assistant here at Valerie's House. I'm a little bit newer, so I haven't hosted the podcast before. But we thought it would be really powerful if someone who had been through this personally would kind of lead the discussion here today. So I'm going to hand it off to Sydney to kind of talk to Nina and Sean about you guys' experiences and how Valerie's House has helped and affected you and just your grief journeys in general. So Sydney, you can go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Okay. So before I start with the questions, I was going to say, I know you guys both said that you're a little nervous, and I've actually done the podcast with Valerie's House before. So if you want, I can start off when I ask the questions, I can share my experience first, and then if it might make you feel more comfortable sharing yours.
It
If
sounds
that
good.
sounds good.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So our first question is, did you know right away that your loved one had died by suicide? So for me, I did know right away. When my mom broke the news to me, I asked how, and she told me right away.
Yeah. I'll jump in, I guess. I also knew right away that my brother had died by suicide. Um, when I came home from school that day, I couldn't get into my house, and my sister was at the neighbor's house. And so they called me over, and my sister told me right then and there. And so I knew that he had taken his own life.
I guess I'll carry on. It was a little bit different for me. I kind of found him with my mom or alongside, because he had locked his bedroom door and she was trying to get in, and then I kind of heard the commotion, and then we kind of myself and my mom kind of found him together. So in that way, it was kind of like in that instance, but
Right. Okay. Okay. And then our next question is, what were your first thoughts when you found out that your loved one died by suicide? And this one's kind of hard because in my opinion, or my situation, I feel like when I found out that my dad had died, just in general, I kind of just blacked out. And my mom told me that he had hung himself, and I was just like, right, right, right. Just kind of like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay. And then eventually, I feel like it didn't even really, really hit me until maybe even like a couple days later. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, this is real. This is happening. Maybe, I mean, it could have even been longer than that. But yeah, when I finally kind of processed it, I guess is the right word to say, I was just in more shock than I was before. It was just shocking to me.
Mhm. I think I can relate to that as well. I woke up, it was just a typical day, typical
Mm-hmm.
Friday, looking forward to the weekend. I was going to spend the night with one of my good friends that night. And my brother actually had, he got home from school first, and then my sister about an hour later, and then myself about an hour after that. And so he was had pulled into the garage and immediately, locked the doors, and he died from carbon monoxide poisoning. And so, I came home just thinking it was another day and excited for the weekend. And so when my sister sat down and told me what was going on, I I almost feel like I had like like an out of body experience, like
Yeah.
right. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like I couldn't I could not process it. I could not comprehend. It felt so unreal what
Mm-hmm.
she was telling me. It was almost like, okay, am I on a show with, like, is someone going to come in and say, ah, ha, ha, joke's on you, not a funny joke. But,
Yeah.
um, it just felt like, no, there's something's not right here. There's a mistake. This does
Mm-hmm.
not make sense at all. So I really did not accept it or feel like it was real. I was just like in shock.
Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, my situation's just so different
Yeah.
uh, because I found my brother with my mom. He had hung himself from the bunk bed in his room, and because we found him, I mean, my mom was very frantic and hysterical, and I kind of went into like I need to do something.
Mm.
Right. So, figuring out like what the next step is rather than just like freaking out. So I mean, I was the one who ran into the kitchen and got the scissors to cut him down, and I was the one who was on the phone with 911. I was the one who opened the doors for the paramedics. So in that sense, it was like I was in fight mode and my mom was in flight mode.
Yeah.
But once they had taken him away on the stretcher, I mean, my mom was like, can you try this? Can you try that? And by that time he had been gone. And after that, I think my mom rode with an officer, a responding officer, and went with him to the hospital. And then, I mean, I called my dad as well. He was at work at the time, but eventually he made his way to the hospital. And then I was just in the kitchen kind of by myself, again, like in shock, kind of blacking out everything. And I didn't really react strongly for a while. So
yeah, and I can kind of relate to you, Sean, in the sense where you were in fight. I was like, okay, so what are we doing? I would wake up every morning and ask my mom to create like a list for me of things to do every day. So I felt like I was being like proactive, I guess, because every time I would stop, I would realize what was going on. And, I probably didn't sleep for like 4 or 5 days. I was just like, okay, what do we need to do? What's next? How can we make this situation better? I just need some jobs.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing was, my parents were very concerned about me, but for the next couple weeks, I was the most fine.
Yeah.
Because of like the meds that he took and what was going on with him, being his brother, I was part of those conversations. So it wasn't like it was foreign or like out of nowhere.
Okay.
So in that sense,
was actually a question I was going to ask, Sean, is this
Yes.
something, and for everyone, of course you're in shock because no matter what, you can see it coming from a mile away and still nothing could prepare you for that. But I'm curious if the people you lost, did you know that they were struggling in this way? These thoughts, had they come up before, or was this kind of totally out of left field for you?
At the time he passed, not really, not as much as I kind of understand now. After talking with my mom, teachers and things like that he was close to in high school, and kind of realizing some of the signs that I didn't really
that's a big
appreciate at the time.
Yeah.
So, or fully understand, I was 15 and now I'm 20, right? So that's, some time to think about things and find meaning where you didn't before. So.
Yeah, for me, at the time, it was completely out of left field. I had absolutely no idea. I was like, my dad was kind of going through like a divorce, but it was just a very toxic relationship. And I knew that he was kind of like spiraling in a way, but my dad, he struggled with, like alcohol and some drug use and things like that. So he was a functioning alcoholic for sure. So like, I knew that he was spiraling and he was, doing those things, but it wasn't really anything that he hadn't been doing his whole life kind of thing. And then probably a couple weeks after he did it, I had found out that he had threatened it a few times before, and people chose not to disclose that information to me. And that just caused opened a whole other can of worms. But yeah, so it was really shocking for me at first, but now I can see where there was a lot of signs that literally screamed, I need help. And I was just like, oh yeah, okay. I had no idea. I mean, I was 19 out with my friends all the time. I really had no idea. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, at the time, it was an absolute shock. Um, but again, looking back, you can always see signs and see things about his personality or just, he was 16, just
Mhm.
being a teenager. I was only 11 at the time. But when I went through my teenage years, boy, I understood so much more the struggle of being a teenager
Mhm.
and how all the things you go through and you deal with emotionally and physically and relationships and school and pressures. So I definitely uh, understood how it could have happened um, when I reached those years. And of course,
Mhm.
as an adult, I've learned so much more.
Yeah.
But, I was 11, I was just a
Mhm.
kid. I just, until that day, I was just a, carefree kid. And then, of course, that changes everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Okay, and so our next question is, do you feel any differently about the loss of that person um, after figuring out kind of that it was a suicide loss, or when you think about it being suicide, does it make you feel differently towards that person? And I would have to say um, it's circumstantial for me. I feel like it's still very like fresh for me. So sometimes I still get really angry, and I don't really, I try not to ask myself why. Um, but it's more of like I cannot believe that happened. Like my dad to me was like the strongest person in the world. So I would say it's circumstantial. I don't, of course I don't love him any less or miss him any less or wish he was somewhere still struggling. But every once in a while I do find myself getting angry.
Mhm. And I was very angry at my brother afterwards. I was angry that he did this to our family, that he caused us so much pain and hurt. And then the way I looked at it is he kind of left us to clean up the mess,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister and I had to see our parents, hurting and in so much pain. And I saw it that, he had inflicted that pain on them. And how could he do that? Um, but and another thing I remember thinking at first too was that if I had been a better little sister, if I hadn't been, there was 5 years between us, I was probably the typical bratty little sister who annoyed her brother. And I thought, if I had been this sweet sister that he adored and loved, and, that he wouldn't have left because he would have wanted to stay, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize now that that's, not the case at all, and that what I've learned from suicide is that they're not really thinking about um, who's left behind and what it's going to be like for them. They have the tunnel vision, and they're just trying to put themselves out of the pain that they're in. So I'm
Right.
more understanding of, I don't have the anger that I had at first or the blame on myself, So
Yeah,
that's a change.
that was a big thing for my brother. He just he was oh well, depression was part of it, obviously, but he was also high performing on the spectrum. So
Mm.
what happened was, is middle school especially, but high school as well. Um, People could tell he was different, but it wasn't different enough where it's like, oh, he's got autism.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that disconnect. And on top of that, he struggled socially. So it kind of compounded all of the different things that he was dealing with. And so he struggled a lot. And I couldn't understand that because I wasn't, dealing with what he was dealing with. And it, I was fortunate enough that I wasn't angry or guilty or anything like that. I mean, he did I think because of how much he thought about it, he wanted to make sure that like we were okay as a family. In terms of like, making it clear that it wasn't anybody's fault.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like they convince themselves too that it's going to be better for the family if they're not there, because they have so much like self, hate and things like that too. And I think sometimes that's the case as well. Like they think that they are doing everybody a favor.
I mean, again, I don't know like fully, but it was just like he wanted to get out. And that's kind of the way, obviously it's not a good thing, but the way that I kind of look at it is it was his choice ultimately. So it wasn't like chance or, it wasn't a car crash. It wasn't like he was being robbed. It wasn't like something was taken from us. Right. It was kind of like, I don't know. It's tough to explain, but it's like
it was like at his will.
Right.
Right.
And in that way, that's how I kind of come to peace with it. So.
Yeah. Like he's not hurting here anymore.
Right. Because he was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that is something you hear mental health professionals talk about too, is it's that want to be able to control some element of your life when you feel like a lot of stuff is out of control.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Do you guys remember how people reacted when they found out that your loved one died by suicide? To be completely honest, I feel like I blacked out probably a solid 2 to 3 weeks after I found out that my dad had passed away. I remember where I was. I was at my best friend's house. My mom ran in, told me. I don't even remember what anybody in the house reacted as or reacted like. And I just know everybody was just very upset. Everyone was shocked, just crying. I do know that now when people find out that my dad died from suicide, they'll, I don't want to say treat me differently, but it's always like, oh my God, it's not the same as when you say, oh yeah, my dad was in a car accident, or, oh, he had cancer, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, they're like, oh my gosh, like, oh, like almost shocked that you told them that that's how they died. So, yeah, which drives me crazy, but I'm sure after a while I'll get used to that.
Probably not. No, you're right. It's the reaction is different than if you said, oh, they died of cancer, or it's and I don't know if it's a lot different now, but like in the 70s, when my brother died, I think there was a lot of stigma attached to the word suicide, and so people didn't really know exactly how to respond or what to say, that's a tough question. I know that at the time my dad was a pastor, which kind of complicated things even more because, on the surface, I think that we appeared to be like, not the perfect family, but, we seemed like everything was great. And, he had this big church he was the leader of. And so we did have a lot of support from the congregation, but I don't know. I'm kind of like, I can relate to you, Sydney. I kind of checked out a little bit. I'm not really sure. I remember people in our house. I remember food coming in. I remember all that stuff, but I don't remember sitting down and actually talking to somebody like one-on-one. There was just a lot of commotion and chaos. And so, yeah, and I was too young to really, like when I went back to school, I think we took a week off school, went back, and I really didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what my classmates knew. I didn't know what they had been told. So, yeah, I don't know.
A week, just a week off school feels crazy.
I think I took like a week and a half off work. I had to go back. I had to do something. I could not just like sit and watch everybody run around in circles all day. I was just like, okay, I gotta, and at the time I was working at the Y, and I was just around like the most adorable little kids all day. So it just made me feel so much better.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that period of time was blurry. I don't remember if I was out for a week or two, but I remember it was so at the time I was a freshman in high school and my brother was a sophomore. So it was leading up to finals and summer. And so I was off for a week or two, and then I ended up going back for my finals and finishing those out. During the time that I was gone, because I went to such a small school, like our student body was like less than 300. So they had and so you get the benefit of being really close to the teachers and stuff like that. But at the same time, what they did was, I mean, they went in like the day after it happened. They went in classroom to classroom and they were like, look, here's what's happened in the past night or whatever. And they basically just made a school-wide announcement, personal. I wasn't there for that. I was at home. But that's what I was told kind of went on. So, when I went back, it was kind of like a, good to see you kind of thing. And then I had the summer. So, it was, yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to remember. It really is.
Coming back for my sophomore year, it was, you do get treated differently. There's like a sensitivity or like a fear of like setting you off.
Yeah.
And that did bother me for a while.
Yeah.
And eventually, because we all kind of went through school together, not that I talked about it, like every conversation, but it became,
a little bit like normal to talk about.
Relaxed.
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah, I feel like, especially like in our generation, suicide is kind of like a joke. Everybody says like,
Yes,
I'm having such a bad day. I just, whatever. And that used to, when it first happened, I want to say for the first like 8 months, if you even like jokingly said that you wanted to like jump off a bridge or whatever, I literally would never talk to you again. I was like, you don't understand. Like, I can't explain it to you enough how much that is not funny. Like, and people would just be like, they would be sorry and they would understand, but they wouldn't really understand. They'd, turn around and be like, geez, like she's crazy.
Well, that was the freshman class that came in like after.
Yeah.
Right. Because it was part of the culture, I should say.
Yeah.
At the time. And everybody, so my year and then the juniors and the seniors, everybody knew about it at that point, right? And so whenever a freshman would kind of make that joke, everybody would be like
not funny.
Like it's,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's something that I struggled with, like not snapping at everybody, like who, if you don't know, you don't know. So
I'm curious, Sean, with that small student body and then everyone knowing what happened and kind of having your back in that way, like, don't make these jokes. Did that, excuse me, feel like a positive thing at all? Or did it feel like you were kind of exposed? You didn't have the opportunity to tell the people you wanted to know.
Well, the thing with that was it was kind of like an understanding at that point. Nobody knew the details. So, I would say the majority of people didn't know that I was the one who cut him down, right? I wasn't
right.
the one who called 911, or like they didn't know I called 911. They didn't know I found him along with my mom, right? So in that sense, it was kind of like if people wanted, like if I was getting close to somebody and they asked and, we had that conversation, then that's what would happen. But more generally, it was just kind of like, don't mess with him because,
Yeah,
he's going to, it's like,
it'll set you off.
right.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Do you guys and your families talk about the loss of your loved one? Sorry, you can cut that part out. Okay. Do your families talk about the loss of your loved one? For me, yeah, I talk about my dad all the time. If something reminds me of him, I'll say it. I wear his clothes. I'm an artist, so when he first passed away, I started painting him, and stuff like that. I'm not uncomfortable talking about him. My mom will tell stories all the time. If I ask any questions, she'll answer them, which I'm very thankful for, that my family is not, like nervous, I guess. Like maybe, some people would like walk on eggshells or not want to bring it up, or they just don't want to talk about it. I'm very thankful that my family and I have open communication about my dad to kind of keep his memory alive for me. That's how I choose to grieve, is to just, keep him kind of relevant in my life. Or yeah.
My family, we talk about Larry as well, even after all these years. I know it sounds crazy. It's been 45 years since I lost my brother, but there are some things that I remember like it was yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things that are blurry and kind of faded because of the time that's passed. But actually, I just talked to my sister the other day, knowing that this podcast was coming up, because her experience was similar to yours, Sean. My sister was only 13, but she was the one that was with my dad when they found Larry. She was the one that was literally had more control. And I wasn't there for all this. When I got home, all this had already happened, and he had been taken to the, emergency room. And so I didn't see any of this. My sister's experience was completely different. She saw everything firsthand. And so I asked her to share with me, again, what her perspective was, because I was kind of missing that, because I wasn't there for it. So she found him with my dad. She stayed calm. She walked my dad. She had just the week before taken a CPR class at school or something. And so she literally walked my dad through what to do so he could try to do CPR on my brother, but he was already gone. So my sister's experience was very much more real. And, I imagine the images in her head, I can't even imagine, and I missed all that. So I already forgot what the question was. No, I think I got sidetracked.
No, that's okay. The question was, do you and your family talk about the loved one that
Oh,
you
thank
lost?
you. Yes. That's sorry about that. I do that
No, that's
sometimes.
okay.
But yeah, so we still talk about him. We talk about our experiences, because we all have a different perspective.
Mhm.
We're different ages. My parents, lost a child. We lost a brother. Um, and now being an adult, those conversations are almost better now because I don't think my parents hold back. I think that
Right.
they know that we can handle all the information now. And we share a lot of memories. He was very artistic, very musical. I have his guitar.
Aw.
We all have tons of music that he wrote in lyrics, which were very revealing. Reading those lyrics after the fact
Yeah.
of losing him, then it was like, oh, maybe this is what he was trying to say. So yeah, we do talk about it. A lot of unanswered questions that we will never get answers to, but we still ask those questions, after all these years.
Mhm.
Wonder why? What if it was this? Could it have been that? We'll never know for sure.
And Nina, you mentioned when you went back to school and being so young and in the 70s that people didn't really know, you didn't really talk about it to people. Do you remember a certain point when you started opening up to people, or has it always kind of been like, just my couple of friends, or I'm just going to talk about it with my family?
Yeah. Honestly, I have not been very open about it at all over the years. Um, we moved shortly, probably about a year after it happened. We moved, got to get a fresh start. And
Mhm.
when I moved, no one knew. And so for me, it was easier. And I felt so guilty about this, but it was easier to kind of pretend like he never existed in a sense. I know that sounds horrible, but one of the first things people ask, is, do you have any brothers or sisters? And
Yeah.
sometimes I would just say, yes, I have one sister. Now
Mhm.
and it was easier because then if you say, oh, I had a brother, then it would be like, oh, really? Well, what happened? Well, he died. Well, how'd he die? And then,
Mhm.
I don't, sometimes you just don't want to talk about it, and especially when it's, I think, suicide. It's just, it scares people off sometimes. Or that was how I felt. They were going to, you know, not want to be around the new girl whose brother killed himself.
Yeah.
That was probably my immature perception, but that's where I was. And so the few people I did share with, the reactions weren't great. I remember becoming very close to a friend, and I thought, I'm gonna tell her,
Mhm.
and I did, and her response was, well, in my family, we believe if someone takes their lives, then they probably go to hell.
Oh.
And I had finally had the nerve to open up to this friend, and that was the response I got. So that made me think, forget it. If someone comes out and flat out asks me, you know, I will let them know. But I didn't bring it up very often. As an adult, I have, but really only with very close friends.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for I mean, the school kind of did it for me, right? So I didn't have to open up, but in terms of like talking about Connor, I didn't really for a couple years, and that's part of the reason why my mom wanted me to go to Valerie's house in the first place, was just to kind of just talk, maybe not about him, but about what I was feeling
Mhm.
and those kinds of things. Um, and the asking, if you have any brothers or sisters. He was my only brother, right? So it's not like I could be like, oh yeah, I have another sister or another brother. It was like,
Yeah.
it was either a yes or no question.
Yeah.
And if it was yes, I gotta say like, oh, he passed away when I was 15. And that, it was interesting. And it's been the whole ramping up into college and then being in college a whirlwind.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I didn't really hone in on those thoughts and those feelings until I was writing college essays, right? And then you get to school and you got roommates, and it's like, oh, you have any siblings? Well, so it and I mean, for 6 months I didn't go into his room. That door stayed closed.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until it's been repainted and had a few kind of aesthetic things done to it, but when that work was getting done, like my dad was doing a few things, I didn't want to help him. I didn't want to be in there.
Mhm.
Because that's where I found him, right? So it was almost like whenever I went in there, it was like a flashback, and it took me a long time, or I mean, what felt like a long time, right, to just go into his room. Forget, looking at his stuff or whatever. Like I didn't want to be near it because it just brought me back to that moment.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I got a lot of my dad's stuff, and I wanted it at first, and then I didn't want it, and then I wanted it, and then I didn't want it. And then his ashes have been in my mom's closet. I haven't looked at them one singular time. Um, I've done nothing with them. I actually have his plot paid off, and his ashes are still sitting in my mom's closet because I'm just like, maybe next week we can do it. I just like, it's so weird, like you think you're ready and then you're not, and then you think you are and then you're not. But kind of like on that same topic, did you ever find yourself hiding the cause of death to people? And for me, I am a pretty strong-willed, like outspoken kind of person, which is how my dad was too. So I am. I will tell people that I don't know. Okay, so I have his handwriting from a card that he wrote me tattooed on my arm right here, and his first part of his first tattoo. So I love this tattoo, these tattoos very, very, very much, but sometimes they cause awkward conversations. Obviously, people will ask me whose handwriting that is. And I'm not afraid to say it was my dad's and that he passed away, but that look in those people's eyes when you tell them why makes me want to cry. Like I just instantly am like, I feel like a little baby, and or it'll make me angry too sometimes. I just so every once in a while, I'll tell people it was like a car accident if I don't know them at all and I feel like I'm never going to see them again in my life. I don't feel like I should have to open up like that to someone. I'll just say, oh, it was a really sudden death. And then, people will be like, oh, a car accident. I'm like, yeah, car accident. So I've done that a couple times, but all my close friends know I don't ever really talk about the details. I mean, there wasn't really much details, but yeah, I don't really go into depth, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I should.
Yeah, I mean, as far as if I didn't want to explain how Connor died, I just wouldn't say that I had a brother in the first place.
Mhm.
And either just say I don't have a brother, or but I mean, lately I've kind of grown into it, if that makes sense. Like a couple of weeks ago, for one of my labs, lab partner was like, where are you from? What's your
Yeah.
major? And, you know, he asked if I had any siblings, and I was like, yeah. And I told him the story.
Mm-hmm.
And, you
Sometimes
know,
it makes you feel good.
well, and I was fortunate because it was actually, you know, he was, you know, accepting, positive.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, you know, sorry to hear that. You know, I'll pray for him, pray for you guys, and that kind of stuff. So because, you know, he's in my class, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, in that sense, I don't want to be like, no, I don't have a brother, or,
Yeah.
You know, am I going to see this guy after this class? He's a senior, you know,
Yeah.
he's going to graduate. And so in that way, it's like, it kind of doesn't phase me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, looking back, I appreciate the people that pushed me to talk about it, because there would be times where I would be asked to go to like fundraisers for the school, you know, big donors and things like that. And, you know, they wanted me to talk about, you know, my loss and kind of how I
Cope with it.
got through it, cope with it, have grown through it. And I mean, I was nervous as hell, like, you know, getting in front of, I mean, there was it was a shooting range out in the Everglades, and it's like a fundraiser thing. And, you know, at the end of the day, there's like a late lunch type thing. And, you know, there was 4 or 5 of us, and I'm in front of like 200 people
Mm-hmm.
talking about, you know, how I lost my brother.
Yeah.
Right. As, you know, a 16, 17-year-old. So at the time, scary, terrifying. Right. But looking back on it, I'm like,
You
yeah,
educated people.
it was not only educating for them, but it was kind of like learning myself too.
Mm-hmm.
So as tough as it was for a while, like the more you talk about it, you kind of learn like what you're capable of in terms of how you want to talk about your person, or what you're comfortable with, really. So
Yeah. I think that I wish I had talked about it more, really. And because that's, I think, how you process things, you know. And I also think that that's, you know, how you can, you know, build closer relationships with other people. If you have this secret that you don't share, it's kind of, you have your walls up. And I think that's what I did for a big portion of my life, is just, you know, had the walls up. I don't want to get too close, because if I do, you might ask questions that I don't want to answer. And so I'm just now at a point in my life where I'm starting to be more free with talking and sharing, and I feel better. I wish I had done it sooner, and especially if it can help others.
Yeah.
I've never met Sydney and Sean and Alexa. I've met you once, and I already feel like you kind of have a common bond with people who have gone through something, even though the circumstances may be different. It's still loss.
Yeah.
And suicide is a different type of loss, and it does come with different feelings, and so I'm proud that it makes me happy to see young people talking about it and sharing their stories. And good for you. I'm proud of y'all. I don't know you, but I'm proud of you.
Thank you. So how do you guys, or what are some things that you guys do to remember the loved one that you lost? Like I said, I'm an artist, so I draw a lot. Sometimes I will, draw my dad, or I drew, he had tattoos all over, and he had a tattoo for me, and I've drawn that before. I talk about him a lot. Like I almost like sometimes I feel like I can make my friends uncomfortable because I'll be like, oh yeah, my dad, blah blah blah. And I find myself sometimes still talking about him like he's just living an hour away. Which is sad because I have to, remind myself every once in a while. But that's mostly how I remember him, is just by talking about him all the time. I mean, not all the time, but a lot of the time with the people that I'm close with. I can, call my mom anytime, or anyone in my family or my very close friends. I'm comfortable with talking about him. But in terms of like actions, I don't really do much besides, I'll draw and talk, and I wear his clothes a lot. So that's what I do.
No, I think, oh, go ahead, Sean.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just going to say that I think for remembering my brother, it's a lot of it has to do with music. That was such a big part of our lives. And we all played piano. He played guitar. He would play his songs on the piano, and my sister and I would sing along, and my parents too, and it was, so I have all his music, and a lot of it, I have memorized songs that and I'll catch myself humming a song, and I'm like, oh, that was Larry's song,
Aw.
and so I think it's just music is the biggest part. And I do have his poetry and his lyrics, and I haven't lately, but from time to time I'll pull it out and just and read a few pages, and it just makes me feel connected to him.
I mean, it's interesting to talk about for me because of where I stand religiously, which is I don't know, frankly. So when he passed, my mom was going to mediums and hypnotists and all these things, and they were telling her and asking all these questions that, unless you're, I'll say, experiencing that person or seeing in some kind of way, that you wouldn't know like who they are, if that makes sense. So, when she was telling me these things, it was like, maybe there's something to this. Like, otherwise, how are you knowing these things? So, one of the things that came out of those conversations that my mom had with those mediums was, one of them kind of communicated with Connor and said, as a way of letting us know that he's with us, or had been with us, or around us, to send little signs. So in that case, it was a white feather. So in that way, it's like, you see a white feather and it's like, okay, oh, Connor's here. Right. What was the hurricane 2017?
Irma.
Yes. So our principal, who Connor was also very close with, and I was very close with as well, my senior year, when Irma hit, it came right over Marco Island, where our high school was. And I mean, currently it's still portables.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're building a permanent building currently, but at the time it was portables. And if I'm remembering correctly, like, it came right over Marco Island, and it should have wiped it out. Right. And, Miss Scott, she lives right next to, I probably shouldn't say her name. Maybe I should. I don't know. She lives next to the school. and she came to her office like the day after, right? Obviously classes are canceled, and she was just kind of checking on things. And on the pavilion, kind of where we have lunch and do like big gatherings and things like that, there was a cardinal.
Mm.
And so, she was like, I fully believe that Connor was up there fighting the hurricane, right? So in those kinds of ways, it's like that's how we kind of remember him, and like to think that he's kind of around us, visiting us from time to time. Other than that, I mean, not that I play much video games now, I'm kind of doing the whole college thing, but we did that a lot. So in a way, it's kind of like in honor of him.
Mhm.
But I mean, we'll talk about him, me and my mom, or people I'm close to. Usually it's anecdotes, not like adding to a conversation, rather than having the conversation be about him.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. And how has Valerie's house and the people and the I'm sorry, what? How has Valerie's house and the people you have met there helped you? So for me, Valerie's house not only helped me through support groups and meeting new people, but Valerie's house actually donated money to me when I first decided that I wanted to bury my dad's ashes, a very generous amount of money, and it helped me a lot. So I am extremely thankful for Valerie's house and everything that it's done for me, and that I have a place that I know other people have felt the same way I have and have some of the same feelings I do that I can reach out to at any time.
Yeah, and I think that for me, Valerie's house, I got involved through Valerie's house by being a volunteer, but I'm healing, and it's crazy to say, but while I'm helping these children and these families heal, I feel like I'm healing too, because I don't think I ever did that. And so it's like a win-win, so I'm giving all I can when I'm there, but I feel like I'm getting so much back as well,
Mhm.
which is really, that wasn't my plan, but it's been amazing. It's a place where you feel connected to others because of an experience that we've all shared. Um, and I think that what it's done for me is I think I've tried my whole life to navigate through my grief by myself, um, for the most part, and haven't done a really great job of it. And so knowing that Valerie's house is a place to help you,
Mhm.
and I hope people will not be afraid to take advantage of that, because it can change your life. I wish I had a place like Valerie's house when I was a child. So yeah, it's pretty amazing place.
And Nina, you recently started mentoring a child, right, who had a similar situation.
Yes, a little girl, 11, 16-year-old brother took his
Mhm.
life.
Wow, very
Very similar. So that's something really, really special too, to have that relationship and to build that bond with her and hopefully help her through, you know, through it all.
Mhm.
So
I'm so glad she has you.
yeah. I'm glad I have her too. Thank you.
And then for me, I I was not comfortable going at first. My mom was the one who was like, you really should go, and I would go with one of my best friends. We've been friends. He was friends with Connor as well. we grew up together. I mean, now it's like probably 12, 15 years we've known each other. So obviously it was hard for him as well, and we kind of went together. And I went for a couple years, and then high school, senior year, kind of ramped up, and I couldn't make the trip to Fort Myers when it was just the Fort Myers house. But I think I said this to Alexa when we were doing that the little piece that went on the website, but it got the ball moving for me, got me talking. Just even little bits, it snowballs. So you kind of gain momentum when it in the healing process. So as time went on, I mean, it wasn't always easy to go because, you know, you're kind of associating this place with negative memories, you know? So it wasn't always easy, but it was definitely helpful. Maybe not in the short term, but looking back on it now, it's been huge for me. Not to mention, you know, they're still supporting me now with scholarships and things like that. So, you know, very thankful in both of those ways. So.
And what are some things that you guys do that help you cope with the loss? I think that art really helps me. Unfortunately, I'm like super busy with work and stuff like that, so I don't draw as much as I used to or as much as I'd like to. But that's definitely something that really helps me. And I think I like to go through his stuff. My dad, he had kind of a, you know, tough childhood, and he was one of those guys, very like simple and didn't have a lot of stuff kind of thing. So I didn't really get much from him, but the things that I do have, sometimes I'll just go through them and just look at them. And he kept like almost every single little drawing that I have ever made and given to him since I was able to draw. So I'll like look at those and do stuff like that. But I don't know, music too really helps, listening to the kind of music that he listened to and his favorite songs and stuff like that. But yeah, that's what really helps me, just art and music, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's really mainly the music. I love listening to, you know, I have memories of listening to, you probably guys don't know what 45s are, but 45 records and albums. And, you know, some of his favorite artists were like Led Zeppelin, and he liked John Denver, Cat Stevens. And, you know, that's the type of music that I love to listen to.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's when I'm missing him or just want to, you know, have a little time to feel like I'm connecting with him, then that's what I'll do. Or go for a walk, put my headsets on and listen while I'm walking on the beach. That's the perfect, perfect way to feel better.
It was writing. So I have a huge Word doc that whenever, you know, I feel like I need to, I'll just write on it. I have a journal as well that I write in. I mean, for the past year and a half, I've been going to a therapist and kind of dealing with, you know, day-to-day things, but also, you know, kind of uncovering the feelings and impacts as I've kind of grown and learning about myself and how that has affected me. So, yeah, just and also being around people too is huge for me. So
Yeah. Being social really helped me as well. Like just going back to work, being around, little kids and being around my friends and stuff like that. As much as like, I feel like sometimes people think that that's you like deflecting or like not, like just distracting yourself. And they kind of put it in like a negative connotation, but I really think that it did help me more than anything, just being social and kind of realizing that even though something so horrible happened to you, the world doesn't stop. Everything keeps moving. I think that was the hardest part, for me was my mom kept telling me like, listen, I know this is really bad. This is horrible, terrible, wouldn't wish it on anyone, but the world is not going to stop for you. And I'd be like, yeah, no, I know that. I know the world's not going to stop. And then all of a sudden someone treated me like nothing had happened. And I was like, whoa, how dare you not know what happened to me, even though I just met you. And it's hard, but being social really did help. Okay, so this is a tough one. If someone listening has also lost a loved one to suicide, what would you want to say to them? I think kind of falling back on what I was just saying is feel whatever you're feeling, act however you want to act. Don't let anybody tell you, keep it in, or if you don't want to talk about it right then, you don't have to talk about it right then. I think that was a big thing for me is I just constantly had people asking me, like hounding me, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, listen, I will tell you if I swear I will tell you if I'm not okay. Like at this point, I'm going to be so open about my mental health now and never stop letting you know when I don't feel okay. But you have to stop asking. Like I would just say, make sure that you tell people how you feel, even if it's don't talk to me, and don't feel bad, and try your very, very hardest not to ask why, even though it's impossible.
The what if game will not end.
It literally will never end.
I think just finding, whatever you're feeling is valid. And just finding the people, the people that are willing to help you, can help you, and surrounding yourself with those people, supportive people. And, if you can't find those people, finding the things that you enjoy doing and can use to grow.
Yeah. Touching on that too, another thing that I would say is there's going to be a lot of people who say that they are there for you, who will not check up on you in a year at the 1 year anniversary or things like that. You really need to watch people's body language and things like that, because I had a lot of experience with your dad was my best friend in the whole entire world, and this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy, because I'm his only child and I've known him my whole life and I have no idea who you are. So just be careful who you open up to in that regard. Everybody wants to be everyone's best friend when they can receive sympathy from it.
I mean, when we had Connor's celebration of life, I would say the majority of the school went, which was fine. But, there were people who were Connor's friends who were not,
Yeah.
in the months leading up, and then
Yep.
we're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And that was very hard for me because I knew that he really valued them as a friend, and then Connor became too weird, right?
Oh.
Or too different, or too this or too that, and they drifted away from that. And in some respects, fine, but if you're gonna pretend like you were friends when he died, that's so. Look at people's motives.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
There are good people out there. You just have to look for them.
100%.
And I would agree. Like, you need to find your safe place, where you can trust and believe the people who are trying to help you. But I also would say, don't try to do it on your own. If people are offering to help, it may take a while to find the right place or the right people, but they are there. Let them help you.
Yeah.
Please let them help you. They want to, and it's not a weakness to need help. So, and I think I would also tell people that as painful as it is, I will never say the pain goes away, because that's not true. I think it eases, and I think it ebbs and flows, but I also think that, like, you can find a life of happiness and fulfillment. You might want to X that out. What's another word I could use? But your life will never be the same, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a happy life.
I agree.
That's really beautiful. Thank you guys so much. I really can't thank you enough for, as you talked about, this isn't something you talk about with everyone. So it really does mean a lot to me, and I know to people who will find this and listen to it. So thank you so much for taking the time and just being there for people, sharing your story. It does make a difference. And I'm so glad that you each found Valerie's house and that it was able to positively affect you and some of the people you've met, and that was able to affect you positively. So I'm just really grateful for each of you, and thanks for sharing your experience and all of your wisdom.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yes.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Learn more about Valerie's House and how you can help us support grieving families and children at valerieshouse.org.